number 9 Ole Miss at number 2 Georgia, 7 p.m. on ESPN. Storyline for me is basically, can Georgia just pass another test, man? They beat their first top 15 opponent of the season this past weekend in number 12 Missouri, 30-21. Missouri, though, held the lead midway through the third quarter, and it was a one-possession game with just a few minutes left. So make no mistake, Georgia was on the ropes in that game. Now you play an even better team in Ole Miss, and they're trying to take down the defending back-to-back champs too. And if Ole Miss does, I know it gets a little wonky in the SEC West because Ole Miss lost to Alabama, but Ole Miss can make it a little interesting now. After beating Georgia, they can be legitimate college football playoff contenders, where right now we're kind of saying, oh yeah, maybe Ole Miss can make some madness happen. They beat Georgia this weekend. We have to take them seriously as a college football playoff contender.
Yeah, right now, what's the best way to put it? Ole Miss is an idea.
Yeah.
They're an idea, right? They're not like in it. They're like, oh, well, in theory.
Like Louisville.
Right?
It's kind of like, oh, maybe something happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the path is more simple for Louisville because they'll get to play in a conference title game. There's a 95% chance Ole Miss is not even going to be able to. So
maybe like Penn State. Penn State, I think, is a better comp where it's like, if they beat Michigan,
Ole Miss could win this game and still not play in a conference title game.
Yeah. So it's like Penn State too.
The problem
Penn State
is
the same way. I think Penn State's a better comp for that then, honestly.
It's an idea, and it's an idea that would have to obviously start this week. Now, if they win this week, how high do they go? Would you put them at 6, 7? Beating Georgia's no small deal. I mean, what is Oregon? By the way, they're doing the thing does Oregon go to 5? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how this would work. So if Ole Miss were to win this game, but regardless, they still have to do it. Let's see if we can find a way for them to do it first. And the thing I look at is Jackson Dart. Okay, when you watch Ole Miss comes out, Lane Kiffin comes out with something different every year, man. Yeah. It's crazy. It's like sometimes it's the run game, sometimes it's trick plays. I remember at FAU it was trick plays like crazy every week. He had like 5 trick plays in the book. Their offense this year kind of operates similar to Georgia. Let's run the ball. Let's get to the play action. Let's not drop back like too much unless we need to, right? And let's take shots down the field when it's warranted. And I think the one thing for Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, I found a fun number. Best passer in the country at or outside the numbers, out towards the sideline. Okay? So I think if you're going to attack Georgia, and it's been like this since Kirby Smart was at Alabama, you do it on the outside vertically, right? Stay away from Malachi Starks. They run a lot of man coverage or kind of man variant-ish things on the outside. Ole Miss maybe has some opportunities here to get outside the numbers vertically, which is what they've been doing this year. It's kind of contradictory to all the trends we've been seeing in football with like Kyle Shanahan and everybody throwing the ball right over the middle, right behind linebackers. Lane Kiffin's kind of zigging instead of zagging, right? So if they can first of all, they got to run the ball well. Junkins and everything's set up for Ole Miss in the run game. If they get the run game going, they get to the play action, right? Because Missouri, like take last week, Missouri's not the biggest play action team. It's in there, but it's not like the bread and butter. Their bread and butter is like pass protection, drop back, read the defense and let it rip, right? Ole Miss wants to go run game, play action, shots down the sideline, okay? Get everybody in, get the safeties in, or get to a single high look, and then attack out here.
Yeah.
If they can do that, they've got a shot. Because I don't think Georgia's corners they're not elite. The one elite player in the secondary is Starks. And if you can make them go single high, with Starks back there by himself in the middle, he's got range. If he's got enough range to get all these balls, like Kyle Hamilton did at Notre Dame, well, then just Malachi Starks might beat you then if he's that good. Yeah. But they're gonna take their chances on the outside. I think they like their chances in these one-on-one matchups. And Jackson Dart, like I said, not a better passer in the country outside the numbers this year. So that's the fun one for me. Is that was a problem for them against Bama. They didn't complete a single deep ball. They need to create. Lane Kiffin has to find the big plays because Kirby Smart's going to look at Bama's game plan and go, "Oh, I'm just going to copy that." Or if he doesn't, I don't know why he wouldn't, because that was the one game they hit no deep shots, and I know they had some guys hurt, but they were a mess in that game because of it.
Yeah. And a guy that I think Georgia really needs to account for, Trey Harris, man, there's some games this year where he looks like one of the best receivers in America, especially this past weekend against Texas A&M, 11 catches for 213 yards and a touchdown. He had other games like LSU game. He had 8 catches for $153 and a touchdown. I know it's Mercer, but still in the Mercer game, he had 6 catches and 4 touchdowns against Mercer. That's ridiculous. So Trey Harris, I think, he had a few one-handed catches against Texas A&M that were filthy. One of them that counted, he got in bounds. The other one, Dart kind of overthrew him in the end zone. He still made a ridiculous one-handed catch out of bounds. He is a really talented receiver. I think one of the most underrated receivers in the country. My biggest matchup, though, is Quinshon Judkins against Georgia, because I think Quinshon Judkins, I had him as a number 2 running back in the country entering the season after Blake Corum because of what he did as a true freshman. Kind of a slow start for Quinshon Judkins in his sophomore season, but he's picked it up, man. And since week 5, he has 436 rushing yards after contact. That is 4th among all running backs in the country. Georgia is only 59th in terms of average depth of tackle in run defense this year. So I would say that Georgia's strength, the defense is still elite, don't get me wrong. But what we're used to talking about with these Georgia defenses in years past was you got first rounders in the linebacking core and you got first rounders on the defensive line, and the secondary is really good, but really it's the front 7 where it's just like, this is the best we've ever seen. This year it's not really like that. I think the secondary is really good for Georgia, but elsewhere, there are some vulnerabilities on this Georgia front 7, and so many people will say, okay, wait a minute, you're saying Quinshon Judkins should carry them to victory. Well, I remember when you guys talked about Ray Davis for Kentucky and him having to carry the Wildcats to victory, and Georgia shut him down, and they shut down Kentucky in that game. Difference, I think, in this game, though, is that Kentucky could not throw the ball. They had no threat of throwing the ball with Devin Leary. There's a threat in this game of Jackson Dart, who's played really well this year. Trey Harris, like I mentioned before, has played really well. They got a really good receiving core outside of that as well. You can't stack the box against Ole Miss because Lane Kiffin will take shots downfield and beat you deep. So if you all of a sudden have light boxes, Quinshon Judkins might be able to run a little wild on the Bulldogs this year. So I think it's a little different than the Kentucky game, and I don't think Georgia will be able to stack the box and just take away Quinshon Judkins, because if you do that, it leaves you vulnerable in the secondary.
You're absolutely right. And Kentucky wasn't a threat throwing the ball, so it really didn't matter. You're right. Judkins has to set up this whole thing.
Yeah.
Schematically, I think Missouri schematically had really good ideas for about 2.5 quarters, and then they kind of started to run out of them, and turnovers got to them. This like X's and O's is the most fun game because you've got Kiffin against Kirby.
Yep.
And I think Kiffin timing up the play calling for when he sees one high, when he sees 2 high, because we've been over this. When they go 2 high, if they can find a way to run the ball against 2 high, you mentioned it. Georgia's D-line this year is not elite. It's not an elite unit. They're good players, but it's not like years past. There's not Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and Jordan Davis and these monsters up front. Maybe in a year or 2 they will be, but not this year. If they can set it up with Judkins, if they can then you set it up, you run. Because, look, Missouri ran the ball well. Cody Schrader, honestly, was the most consistent player on their offense last week.
And Cook ran the ball, too, pretty well on them, too. Cook had a few plays where he got outside.
And he did. And, look, Dart's mobile. Dart is probably about the same amount of mobile as Brady Cook is. Maybe even a better threat in the read option game.
Yeah.
You have to have an element of quarterback run. You have to be able to set up – they have to set up the play action. I think first and second down – and good field position for Ole Miss is massive in this. Get yourself in play action shot situations. If they come out the first play and Judkins runs for 7 yards, the engine gets rolling. But it can't get rolling if they get stuffed on first and second. They don't want to throw the ball on 3rd and 10. They're not particularly like Dart here and there, but that's not their game. Lane Kiffin, everything is about Lane Kiffin schematically setting things up, setting up safeties and creating space. Okay, especially this year when he gets single high, they are then going outside away from the single high, especially if they get like a cover 1 man coverage type of look in this game. They don't throw the ball like it's not like when they see 3 deep, they don't really throw the ball up the seam. I'm telling you, they go outside towards the sidelines and keep things away from danger. They're not one of these teams that throws the ball over the middle of the field, right? If Kiffin finds the groove, they've got a shot. But they have to be good on first down, especially with Judkins, and then get the ball out. 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 And then get and really time it. He's got to time it up right. And honestly, look, we've watched Lane Kiffin for years and years, and that was on. I got to see him when he was coaching even at FAU. I was just for as much as they ripped him for the Tennessee stuff and the Raiders and everything before that. I was so blown away every week with the play calling.
Yeah.
And it's the same way. They lost to Bama and they only scored 10 points and didn't hit any deep shots. And he just keeps finding ways to score boatloads of points. Some weeks I had him against Auburn. They ran the ball a ton against Auburn. They just outran Auburn when Auburn wanted the game to be that way. They just find ways. And if he can find his way, starting with Judkins, to get play action shots, they could be living right in this game.
Dude, the comparison I just thought of in my head, and tell me if I'm wrong in saying this, Lane Kiffin is a lot like what people wanted Josh McDaniels to be. Where it was like, it didn't work out. It didn't work out at all the first time. It was a complete freaking disaster. I mean, Lane Kiffin even had a shot in the NFL, and that went horribly. He had a shot at USC. It went really bad. And then kind of, took his lumps. He went coach under Nick Saban, was the offensive coordinator there. McDaniels did the same thing under Belichick, two legends of the game they coached under, kind of got their feet going again. You're saying, okay, maybe now it might work. And McDaniels, again, crashed and burned because he didn't change at all. Lane Kiffin, though, is doing well. I think he's learned from his mistakes in the past. So I think, that's the comp I would make, is it's kind of like what we hoped Josh McDaniels would do, where he's like, oh, I can't do that anymore. And he didn't really do that in his second stint with the Raiders. But yeah, Lane Kiffin's kind of like that in my opinion. But listen, man, that Ole Miss offense, I mean, they can beat you with Judkins. They can also put up 55 points on you like they did against LSU as well with Jackson Dart in that passing game. So it's a dangerous offense because you don't know. They could beat you in any single way. So I think Georgia is a little bit on upset alert this week. But ultimately, Dalton, will the Bulldogs lose their first game since the 2021 SEC championship game? And will Ole Miss become a playoff contender? Or will it be kind of business as usual for the Bulldogs?
I do absolutely think they're on upset alert. But I think I look at this game very similar to last week's game. I think Ole Miss can beat them. I think they can absolutely keep this within a score. They can win the game. Ole Miss could win this game.
Yeah.
Like a couple things break right, execute well, whatever. I think the two differences for me are Ole Miss's major weakness is in run defense, and they just need to they need to be physical with Georgia, and that's going to be hard. And the other thing for me too is Carson Beck just doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't give you any opportunities to just, he doesn't blow it. So those two factors, I think it's very similar to me, like as it was against Missouri. I think Ole Miss keeps this a game. I think at the end of the day, Georgia are just right now the masters of not giving it away. So I'm going to take Georgia similar to last week. I'm going to say 31-24.
Okay. I got 35-24. I got Georgia winning this game as well. I think Judkins and Dart and those receivers, they keep the Rebels alive. It's a close game, and I think you mentioned it, man. We didn't even talk about the other side of the ball. Carson Beck is playing such good football right now. Such good football. Bowers, again, might be able to go in this one. There are reports that he's running in practice. He's doing a little bit more every single day. There's a chance he plays in this game. And if he does, that is a major addition for Carson Beck, who's already playing lights out football even without Brock Bowers. If you add the best tight end maybe in college football history to that offense once again, man, it could be scary. I think Carson Beck is the most underrated quarterback in the country right now. I put him in the top 5 to 6 Heisman candidates right now, and I just think it'll be too much for Ole Miss. But should be a good game. I think Ole Miss definitely can pull this off. Don't get me wrong. They can definitely pull this game off. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But I do think Georgia wins this game by 2 scores.